Welcome to the Cerner SurgiNet Anesthesia training video number 1. We'll get started by opening PowerChart. And we'll log in using our Citrix username and password. In this case, I've got a generic one. This will be the same as your badge tap credentials or storefront.stdom.com. And the first thing you're greeted with is the perioperative tracking shell. And you've got a whiteboard here with different options in this drop-down box. You've got the L&D suite. You've got another anesthesia window which gives you some different views. It gives you the ability to go back to the day of or to the next day, or select L&D again, which actually is the same as this list, no different. And then finally the pre-ops, your work list there. Now this is helpful if you want to access the chart. So if I wanted to access the chart here and double click, I can open it up, and this gives me the ability to document a pre-anesthesia evaluation. But in this case, I'm not going to be doing that. I'm going to be going to the SurgiNet Anesthesia module to document a case in the OR. So I find this icon here on the menu bar, SurgiNet Anesthesia. Click it once, and it loads up the module and gives me the opportunity to select some of the cases that are posted for today. The cases you see down here are for today's date. You'll see up here in the start date, end date, it defaults to from midnight of the current day to nearly midnight at the end of the day. I can also go up here and search by OR and get more specific if I want to, but the easiest thing is just to find your case down here if you're in the SDH main OR, and just click on them and go. I'm going to go back in time, however, and actually go back to September 20th or so. I want to select an older case just so I don't mess anybody up when I'm doing this. And I'm going to pick a case that has not had a record created. So in this case, I'm going to go with this cholecystectomy on Melinda Test. I'll double click on her. This first screen gives me the opportunity to ensure I'm documenting on the correct patient. There is a way to disassociate the case, which I'll explain toward the end of my video series. If you end up documenting on the wrong patient, and human nature being what it is, it will probably happen at some point. But the system does its best to try to get us aware of who we're documenting on. So I'll click the green check mark because I know I'm documenting on the right patient. This window typically will not come up if you're working on a computer station in the OR. I'll just say cancel. And the first thing you're greeted with is the start time. Now, I've tried to make this video several times in a row, and my first inclination was to say no, but there's something important about this start user window, is that it documents not only the start time, but it also documents you and your presence on the case automatically. If you choose not to do this and choose to document your anesthesia start time separately, then you'll have to remember to add yourself to this bar down here. So for demonstration purposes, let's say we're going to start a few minutes later and say yes. So it not only documents the start time, it documents my presence in here as well. It documents when I'm going to start. Once again, an opportunity to check your patient's identification. Now, since this patient, these things typically up here would be documented, the SA class and the OR and everything from other systems. I don't have it in this mock environment, so I'm going to document those quickly. But typically you will not have to do this because you will have already done this in your anesthesia pre-evaluation, and it will feed into the system. So now I'm ready to start documenting. My first task is to pick a macro that will automatically populate my to-do list. So I go to my macro. I have several options here under General, Labor and Delivery, MAC, Regional Anesthesia, Ortho, and even Pediatric. I'll just pick General for demonstration purposes. This is kind of where we should, if we need to, stop and get our patient back and into the room ready to go. You'll see that several things are pre-selected for execution. The anesthesia start, the actual time, the monitors, and there's several medications on here. The medications are not automatically started though, they're just available for quick selection and recording. So we'll just go ahead and say set all times to current. That way it will match our current clock. So notice it says 16:39. I'll say set all times to current. It actually had advanced 1 minute ahead of time, so now it's set to the current time, and I'll say execute. You'll see all my medications that are available for use have pre-populated, as well as my monitors. They have started. You'll see here at the current time, this yellow bar documented my anesthesia start time, my monitors. See, I can hover over this, and my macro. And notice that these things are not fixed in time. I can actually grab this and move this if I want to. I can change the time. So my next step is to get my to-do list and get started. I click this little arrow to pull my to-do list out. And the goal is to work through this list until I get to the bottom, and at that point I should be finished. So I will position the patient. One thing about Cerner that you have to be aware of is that there's multiple ways to document. I can, and I'll do a different way to document for each one of my items in the to-do list. So for positioning, I can click there, click down here in the edit, and then go in and make my changes or whatever I need to do. And then I can say execute, and it will execute at the current time. I can actually use this time bar and move it around. Change the time, say execute. Then suddenly it appears. I can go back and modify it. I can go back and move it. I'm not stuck with that time. I can also go up here and grab it, pull it down here to whatever time I want, and then double click it to make any changes. I can even go back and change the time. Another option is I can right click and say edit to bring up this window from right there, make my changes. Once again, if I'm happy with my current time, I can use that. But if I'm documenting at a point in the procedure where I can stop for a moment, take a breather, and get all my documentation caught up, let's say it was further back in time, I can move it back. But for demonstration purposes, we'll keep it about this time. And once again, say execute. Now it appears. So, and you just work through the list. Let's say I'm doing my medications. I want to record that I've given the patient 5 milligrams of Versed. These medications that were on my macro, they're not automatically started. I have to click, just left click on it, brings up my window, and I can say 5 milligrams right here. If I'm happy with the time here, or I can move it. So move it back in time a little bit. Say OK. And you'll see here, there's my time, 5 milligrams. Once again, I can click on it again and change the time and alter it if I want to. I can just keep working through this list, keep working through my medications, and I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes. These may not be accurate. And if I'm happy with the current time, or I can move it back or move it forward, and there it is. So now here I am with an antibiotic on my to-do list. Once again, I can just double click. If I double click it, it will add it straight to my current time. If I double click it. If I would rather just execute it immediately instead of double clicking it, I can click this little button. It really has no advantages over double clicking it. If I want to edit it first, I can click this button, or I can just go up here and right click and say edit. I can say I gave the patient 1 gram, execute. Notice it added cefazole in here and put the 1 gram right here at the current time. I keep working my way through. I can right click to edit, to do my documentation. Let's say I had a difficult intubation. There is an option down here to say, well, yes, that little glitch there, that should have unclicked, but it didn't. I can say, please describe. I come over here. I can even use my dragon to dictate or type whatever I need to. Not that you would write this, but I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes only. I can change my time, whenever I did it, execute, and just working through the list. So as I'm working through the list, I can go here and document. So for example, on my EKG, I can click this and say the patient is under normal sinus rhythm. I could go later on and say, oh, the patient went to AFib. Notice actually it went back to AFib to the anchor point. That's an important point with this. These lines are the points where you can change the documentation. So I've got normal sinus rhythm at this 5-minute mark. These are 5-minute increments, as you see. But if this was an AFib right here, I can click that and go to atrial fibrillation. And now you've got AFib there. And if I just clicked normal sinus rhythm and didn't click it again, that would be assumed that normal sinus rhythm was running all the way through the strip. Well, this video is running about the 12-minute mark, so I'm going to stop it and we'll pick up where we left off in the second video.